When you hear that over and over and over again for a decade plus, it takes a toll. I don't care who you are. I don't care how self-confident you are, how much you know that it's not true. It takes a toll. The subconscious mind absorbs it, even if you work to try not to.
A lot of people have issues around, one, believing that you have to work hard to make money, and two, the other beliefs that you mentioned about money. So how do you reinstall those beliefs?
I would just consciously say, oh, that's bullshit. That's not true. This is true. And I would seek out examples of people and situations where that supported the other belief that I was trying to believe. And I would ignore examples that supported the belief that I was trying to get rid of. Having come out of that, it's like, oh my God, the world is a wonderful place still. It actually is a fun place and a wonderful place.
You're listening to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. I'm your host, Lori Seitz. This show exists because fine is a lie leaders tell themselves, and it costs them their people, their culture, and their impact. Every episode, a leader gets honest about what it really takes to lead with empathy, vulnerability, gratitude, and courage. I trust something in this conversation will stay with you. So let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. We have a very special guest today, Everte Farnell. Everett and I go way back. Welcome to the show.
Longer than we like to remember.
Yes. Well, and before we jump into the first question, I usually don't do this, but I do want to share your bio because you actually followed the directions that I ask my guests. I say, give me a short bio for your intro, and you get bonus points for making it fun. And of course, you made it fun. So Everett is a poorly educated, underachieving trailer park progeny who managed to stumble his way into a secret weapon that businesses all over the world have used to drive sales and create exponential growth.
Okay. Well, I grew up in a little town called Umatilla, Florida, and it is exactly what it sounds like. A little town that, it's a 2 or 3 mile stretch on Highway 19 going through Florida, and it's full of farms and old houses and rednecks and big trucks. I mean, that's
exactly what you think of when you think of like old, not like, what's the term I'm looking for? Like Florida years ago, before it became as developed as it is.
Once you get out of Miami and Tampa and Orlando, it's still pretty rural. Even Fort Lauderdale. I was born in Fort Lauderdale, but even back then it was pretty rural.
What were the values and beliefs that you were raised with that contributed to who you've become?
I've actually reinstalled new values and beliefs for most of the stuff.
Okay.
Probably the one that stuck is to be honest and try and tell the truth all the time. And even if it sucks or even if it's tough, it's better than trying to juggle, to remember lies and juggle them. And the old British saying my mother used to say all the time was, the truth will out. And I have found that tends to be the case in life, that the truth does come out at some point, even if, so better just to let it out of the bag immediately. And of course there's other times when you'd rather not, maybe in the immediate time, but it's always easier to do that than it is to, it's easy to tell the truth when it's easy, but when it's tough, it's always better to get it over with, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So what were the values that you had that were installed that you maybe uninstalled and reinstalled new?
A lot of them built around money. People with money are dishonest. People with money are bad people. They don't work for their money, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of really toxic stuff about money, which by the way, I still struggle with some today. It's it's a Catholic order, and I can't remember who they are now. But it's a specific Catholic order. Jesuits. The Jesuits used to say, give us a child until they're 7 and we'll have them for the rest of their life. And that's just a representation of how difficult it can be to get rid of some of the, some of those limiting beliefs that people tend to carry around with them. So But that was the big one. I mean, the other one was hard work being related to money.
Yep.
I mean, sure, you can make money with hard work, but there's also a lot of other ways to make money without hard work, and sometimes with no work at all. I mean, when I had a roofing company and we pushed it to 10 times its sales in about 10 times its weekly sales in about 16 months, I was working about 4 hours a day, and I was never, ever, ever on a roof driving a nail. I used to joke that I don't even know which end of the hammer to use. And of course, the deeper joke there is that roofers don't use hammers; they use nail guns. So I'd say I don't even know what end of the hammer to use, and they're not even using hammers. So that was
Right.
was a
Right.
two-level joke.
If you know the industry, yes. Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Which it brings us to, like, I didn't mention at the beginning of how you and I met, was you were one of the first clients I had for the gratitude cookies
Was I really one of the first?
back in the day. I don't know if you were one of the first. You were definitely one of the most memorable.
Yeah. Well, I love those cookies. Oh my God, I started buying them for clients when I was in the animal remediation business. I mean, everybody, they all got a thing of the cookies when they signed up, and it made a substantial difference in my stick rate. And everybody loved those cookies, including myself. I mean,
I know we've had conversations in recent past years, and you've asked me if they're ever coming back, which they are not. But let's not get too distracted off the topic. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that's how long ago it was, and that we met through that whole Dan Kennedy world.
Yeah.
Which, is like another life.
Food's a great way to create a stick or to create obligation. Better than most ways is you feed somebody and suddenly they really feel indebted to you.
Yeah, because there's something really primitive about feeding somebody.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So since you brought it up about rewiring or reinstalling or installing new beliefs, how have you gone about doing that? Because this is something that a lot of people who are listening, or even people who are not listening, if you're listening and you know somebody who's not listening, send them a link to this episode. A lot of people have issues around, one, believing that you have to work hard to make money, and two, the other beliefs that you mentioned about money. So how do you reinstall those beliefs?
Mm-hmm.
Or how have you done it?
Yeah, it's not, I wouldn't say I have a formal process that I go to, but really I would just I would take note when I said something that was disempowering or was opposite of the belief that I wanted to assume. And I would just consciously say, "Oh, that's bullshit. That's not true. This is true." And for years I would do that. And then I would seek out examples of, of people and situations where that supported the other belief that I was trying to believe. And I would exclude examples of, or ignore examples that supported the belief that I was trying to get rid of. So it's not a fast process. And it's really easy to backslide, and it's something that you've got to constantly work on. Mm-hmm. I would say even once you have adopted the new belief, it's not, there's still a core, it can take years to get rid, to fully divest yourself of disempowering beliefs around anything for that matter. And it's just a matter of, consciously doing it, of just seeking out examples and refusing to allow yourself to say things. I used to say all kinds of disempowering stuff about myself.
Right.
Oh, that was stupid. Oh, I'm so stupid. That kind of stuff, which a lot of people say, just, saying, oh, it's just joking. Yeah, but your subconscious doesn't know. When it hears it and it hears you saying it, it doesn't know it's a joke. And, so it's just a lot of being very, very conscious and in the moment with your thoughts, and working to change them, and being intentional about it. A lot of intention is involved,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With basically anybody who's living an intentional life, or living a life of purpose and fulfillment, is being intentional.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have some people, the truth is that most people have, most people have all kinds of disempowering ideas in their head and disempowering thoughts in their head that were instilled there for right or wrong by their parents. I've along my journey, I tried not to do that with my kids, but the truth is, you can't help it.
Right.
That's the, there's an old spiritual belief in Europe that says that your, um, that your ancestors are with you all the time. Well, what that is a representation of the way that your great great grandfather raised your great great grandmother, and the way that your great great grandmother raised your great great grandfather, and the way that he raised your grandfather, and the way that he raised your mother
Mm-hmm.
is now represented in you. There's a lot of things that, with my kids, I used to tell them, listen, every parent, despite our best attempts, every parent fucks their kids up. It's your job to unfuck yourself.
Yes.
That's the way the world works, and it's terrible. And I wish it wasn't so. And I wish I was absolutely self-actualized and understood everything, but I don't. And there's going to be things that we do that give you baggage and problems, and it's your job to put that stuff down and improve yourself.
And even then, like, even if you as a parent did everything right, which is impossible, but let's say you did, the stories that your kids make up in their own heads about something you said or something they saw, you don't have any control over that.
Right.
And that could install a belief that is disempowering, but you had nothing to do with it. It was their interpretation.
Absolutely. There was something I heard. I'm going to try and get the age right, but I can't promise it's the right age. But something I heard one time was that kids, when they see themselves in a mirror, have a good self-image of themselves until I think it was 4 or 5 years old. And then they start noticing the negatives, if that makes sense. So
interesting.
So up until that age, it's great to have a mirror in the child's room because they see themselves, and it bolsters their self-confidence. After that, and they see themselves, it actually tears down their self-confidence. Which I thought that was interesting too. So it's like, just like you said, I mean, it's the stories people tell themselves. There is one thing, about along those lines. There is another way that I've gotten rid of some disempowering beliefs, if you don't mind me going back to that.
Let's go back to it. And then I want to get into the other story.
Okay. And this actually is kind of related to the other story too. If it's a story I think you're talking about, I never really saw myself as an attractive guy. I thought at best I'm average. And so I went through. Now, I mean, a lot of people disagreed with me, but I was, oh, you're just being nice. Oh, bullshit. Oh, you have to say that we're dating. Oh, you have to, you know what I mean? But as I've gotten older, I've had some experiences that said, oh, well, maybe. So instead of trying to change that, what I did, I just ran around it. And so now my belief is that all of that stuff is true that I believed when I was in high school and college and 20s, but everybody else in my age group has deteriorated so much that my status has now risen. So now I'm when you compare me to the competition, I used to be average, but now I'm above average
I
because
like that.
Everybody else sucks so bad. Everybody
It is true. Once you get over 50, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Men go downhill, I think, a lot quicker. I don't know. I've been on the apps and I've seen some stuff that I wish I could unsee. So
sure. I have heard some stories, I promise you, that would just bend the imagination. Like, how could anybody possibly do that? But
yeah. So speaking of being stuck in disempowering beliefs and not believing in yourself, you have a story of a time when you were telling people that everything was fine, but it was not fine at all. And I didn't even know this story until when we first met. I had no idea because you were living it and you weren't sharing it.
Right. Yeah, I was married to somebody who, and I say she has borderline personality disorder, but I want to clarify that just to make sure it's not diagnosed. And I never said that publicly, even though I suspected it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I never said it publicly until somebody I know with a master's degree in psychology, who had known us both for, you know, the entire time we've been married. Uh, she told me that she had my ex pinned as a borderline for, X amount of time or whatever. I don't remember how long, but she had come to the conclusion that she was a borderline. Now, this person never saw my ex clinically, and she never had
Mm-hmm.
and she's not educated to the point where she can actually make a proper diagnosis. However, what I like to say is that she's not educated to the point to have a proper diagnosis, but she's educated both formally and experientially to the point where she's allowed to have an opinion. So even though there's not a specific diagnosis, because that is a clinical diagnosis, borderline
Sure.
personality
Sure.
disorder.
So we'll just be clear about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's people throw it around a lot, but now now I say, well, she's a borderline, but I say that because this other person confirmed my suspicion, and like I said, had known us for at the point 15 years or something. So she was very familiar with the marriage.
What does that mean? And what was your experience? How long were you married?
17 years. And borderline personality disorder is part of a cluster B personality disorder. It's associated, not the exact same, but very similar to narcissistic personality disorder. They do have a few different traits and different sources and different places that they normally show up. So as my understanding is, borderline is normally more in women. Narcissistic personality disorder is normally more in men. And the reason I wanted to go through it is you'll hear, I mean, everybody these days says, oh, my ex was a narcissist, and okay,
Yeah,
whatever.
I think it is overused.
But so I wanted to clarify that
Mm-hmm.
that I say that not, I say that not as a layperson diagnosis. It was a layperson suspicion that was confirmed by a professional who was very, very familiar with our marriage and with us. And so anyway, that said, borderlines have a ingrown, very, very, very bad self-image and no self-confidence. So as a result, what they tend to do is they tend to tear the people around them down because they have a fear of abandonment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so it's not something that happens consciously. This is not people sitting plotting. It's just it's a kind of a natural process in the disorder. But they, as I understand it, they want to keep people around them pulled down and keep them broken, because if somebody had any self-confidence and self-reliance, why would they ever stay around the person who's a borderline?
Yeah.
So instead of, like most people would think logically, if I am afraid of being abandoned, then I'm going to treat the people I don't want to be abandoned by so amazingly well that they would never even consider abandoning me. What the borderline says is, I'm afraid of being abandoned, so I'm going to make sure that everybody around me is broken so that they know that they could never find anybody else to replace me in their life, and that'll keep them attached.
So how did that play out in your marriage?
Well, with a lot of verbal and emotional abuse, even some physical abuse. I mean, she smashed a flashlight over my head one time when we were in the middle of an argument. So yeah, I mean, it was not pleasant. And I mean, I would hear things on a regular basis that, anything I ever accomplished was only because of her. I was worthless. I was, a worthless piece of shit was something that came up on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I would, I'd say, what the fuck does she know? But when you hear that over and over, and the first few years weren't really bad, but the last 10 years were, it was increasingly bad over and over and over. And when you hear that over and over and over again for a decade plus, it takes a toll. I don't care who you are. I don't care how self-confident you are, how much that it's not true. It takes a toll. The subconscious mind absorbs it, even if you work to try not to. And, I, add to that I was, that I had undiagnosed sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
So I was gaining weight on a relatively significant basis. I'm 100 pounds lighter now, and I still have another 60 to go. So, I mean, that's 160 pounds. That's a whole person I had extra on my body. So
Right, right, right. Because of the apnea, or do you think it's because of the abuse and the self-image that you were creating unconsciously?
it was all of it. So it was the apnea. It was drinking because that's how, and I'm certainly not suggesting this is healthy, but that's how I dealt with, that's how I dealt with all the problems at home. It was, depression, even though at the time I would not have said I was depressed. I've come to understand now that there's actually a thing that clinicians call smiling depression or something along those lines, where you wouldn't even know somebody's depressed, but they are, and they might not even know that they're depressed, but but they actually are clinically depressed. And I'm convinced, well, again, no diagnosis, but I'm convinced I was going through that. So it was a lot of things, and it was like I had, I would go out and
Mhm.
I would go out and work to build a business. And then I would come home. And of course, that's a fight every day. And, I mean, and then you come home and it's fighting at home. So I'm fighting at work and fighting at home and fighting at work and fighting at home. The reason I sold my roofing company so rapidly, and in a way that did not benefit me at all in the long run was because, I was tired of fighting all the time. I had to make a decision whether I wanted to keep my family together or whether I wanted to keep the roofing company, because I wasn't able to do both. And so I sold the roofing company in a terrible deal with, and got out in order to keep. Now, in retrospect, I will say this,
Mhm.
knowing where I'm at now, I would not have changed anything. Because the woman I'm married to now is absolutely amazing. Like by far the healthiest relationship I've ever had. We've been together. We got married at about a year. And that was in January, so it was a little over a year. We got married, and so what's that? So November till now, so about a little over a year and a half. Never an argument. There's been a couple of conversations that I mean,
Mhm.
if you're
Sure,
not with
you're always
somebody,
gonna have some disagreement.
yeah, but everything is always a conversation. And it's always, if one of us is getting upset, it's always just, let's talk about this later. I'm starting to get upset. Okay, no problem. And I mean, it's the healthiest, most amazing relationship I've ever had. So knowing that had I taken a different path, I probably would have never met her. I'm inclined to say I wouldn't change anything.
Mhm.
But that said, just from a dollars and cents perspective, I should have chosen the business over my wife, over my family, and divorced her and taken the kids. And I would probably have a 8 or 9 figure net worth today if I had done that.
Why, and this question gets asked all the time, and I know people are listening and wanting me to ask this question, why didn't you leave earlier?
There was a couple of reasons, and it took me some internal debriefing to come to terms with one of them. One of them, and it was a legitimate reason, was because I had read research. Because I mean, there was no question. I told her on a number of occasions, when these kids hit 18, I'm out. I'm
Mhm.
done.
And
That
you
was
have
the
4, right?
conversation.
4
Yeah, we have
kids.
four.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was a conversation we had on a regular basis. Regular basis, 2-3 times a year. I mean, that was a comment. She knew that I was looking for the door, but I wasn't going to leave because I had read some research that, and for multiple sources, that say that kids have better outcomes when they're raised in a 2-parent household, even if the parents aren't in love. Now, what I missed was that that's not the case when it's a toxic environment.
Mhm.
So when there's fighting and arguing and problems on a regular basis, that's not, they don't have better outcomes. I would have been better off for my kids to divorce her and take them. And you know what I mean? That would have worked out much better for me, and for them. But I didn't know that at the time. So that's one reason. The other reason, and like I said, it took me a few years to really come to terms with this and accept it. But I was also scared. Her things had worked. Am I ever going to find anybody? I'm fat as a house, and and by that time I was having, we were having, there was no real
Hmm.
financial stability because I was depressed all the time and drinking too much, and I was the sole provider for the family. She was a stay at home mom. So I made enough to get by, but I wasn't, I wasn't lighting the world on fire. And it was like, uh, you know, I'm not gonna, am I ever gonna, I don't have anything to offer somebody. I'm not in good shape. I'm fat. I'm not a good looking guy. I don't have any real financial stability. Like, is anybody ever, is this the best that I'm ever going to be able to do?
Hmm.
I was not ready. I was in my mid to late 40s. I was not ready to be put out to pasture, so to speak, and so that was, that was a real fear. But of course, things progressed to the point where there just wasn't any choice. It was what had to happen.
Hmm. And so when you left, uh, you still had kids at home. They weren't all 18 yet.
I, I did. I actually didn't leave. She got arrested for she had had the situation between her and our oldest daughter. She adopted her. She's my oldest daughter, but she had adopted her. The situation between had become increasingly strained, which is pretty normal with borderline. So when kids are young, they do very well, but as they get older and start hitting preteen and teen and start getting their own identity, and now they're no longer an extension of the person,
Hmm.
things tend to get worse and worse, and that's a pattern that's happened with all the kids as they've grown up. So things between Morgan, my oldest, and my ex were getting more and more volatile. And it got to a point where she actually attacked Morgan one day in the kitchen. Um, and now, don't feel bad for Morgan. My little girl had been studying MMA for 2.5 or 3 years at that point, and she did a drill
Mm.
that they do over and over again, and she did some lateral movement and hit her in twice with two jabs, and and my ex went down. But I could see when it happened that it was all instinct. It was all just doing those drills. She wasn't attacking her. My ex came up and shoved her. Morgan went up on a stove, almost on a hot stove. She almost touched the hot stove. She came back down and just instinctively did it
Hmm.
because the look on her face she was horrified that she had done that. I could tell right away. She was just like, she was scared and horrified and just recognized. And um, so my ex got back up and started coming at her, and I got between them. And I had been in the other room working, and I heard this, and then I came out, about the time that this happened. So I got in between them and said, "Whoa, whoa, what the?" And and then she bit me a couple of times on the shoulder, bit the hell out of me. I mean, I was, drew blood, and I told my son, who was 15 at the time, my oldest son, I told him, call the police. And so he called the police, and she was arrested for domestic battery. They had been out several times. I had to call them several times over the years, and which is kind of embarrassing,
Hmm.
but so they arrested her. And at that point, when they arrested her, I said, that's it. I can't do this. She's now attacking the children. She's been verbally ugly to the children, but now she's attacking the children. That's too much. If she attacks me, I don't like it. I think it's out of line, but she's not going to hurt me. But she was a grown adult and she was attacking the children, and that was it. So she was actually the one that left because she got a free stay at the Vertical Bar Hotel for a few days until a friend bailed her out.
I have not heard it referred to like that. You had, so part of the reason I wanted to have you on the show to share your story, and thank you very much for being vulnerable, because a lot of times we've heard stories from women who have been in abusive relationships, but not so many from men. And you had some really interesting information that you shared with me when we did our call before this about abuse. Tell us what those are.
Well, when I started looking into it, it turns out that while more abuse is reported by women, so the reported abuse is male on female abuse. a majority of the abuse, and it's a small majority, it's like 51% or 51.5%. So it's not like a big majority, but a majority of the abuse that happen in domestic abuse that happens in domestic situations are female abuse against men. Men tend to not report it. And the fact is that male abuse against women is much, much more dangerous for the woman than female abuse against men is for the men. So it's not
Yeah, absolutely.
you know what I mean? Like it's a lopsided variable. But if you look at it from a philosophic point of view, that we shouldn't be abusing each other, we shouldn't be hitting each other, we shouldn't be biting and scratching and doing this kind of stuff to each other. If you just then a majority of the abuse is committed. A majority of the domestic abuse is committed female on male domestic abuse, even though it's not reported.
That doesn't actually, I mean, it kind of surprised me, but it kind of doesn't, because men are not, you're looked at, you're supposed to be I supposed to, in quotes, the provider and the protector. And so if you're attacked by your female partner, like you mentioned embarrassment earlier, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, I don't want to call the police because I've been attacked by a woman.
It's embarrassing, and there's a skew in our society. So I actually filed for an injunction after she was arrested. I filed for an injunction, a civil injunction. There was in Florida, there's automatically a criminal injunction, but I also filed for a civil injunction, and the judge denied the injunction because he said, "You're a big guy. You could have put a stop to this anytime you wanted." And I said, yeah, and then I would have been the one in jail, because so
Mm-hmm.
responding in any way for a man responding, it's the man is the one who gets arrested. And listen, I understand that it's more dangerous for women. I mean, she smashed a flashlight over my head, and I didn't miss a beat. I had a little cut and a little bruise, but I didn't miss a beat. So I get that. Most women trying to hurt most men is not it's asymmetric.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't I'm not opposed to protecting women against male abusers because it is way more dangerous for them. But that said, when men seek help, the attitude shouldn't be, "Oh, you're a big guy, you could stop it." The attitude should be, "We don't do this to each other, so you know what I mean." So we're
Yeah, absolutely. We're not negating either side being valid, and we're just exposing that this happens.
yeah. So
And yeah, um, how has this, how do you think you're a better person now, having gone through this experience?
I'm way more empathetic with every situation in life. I mean, I used to be far more judgmental with people, and I was never like a super judgmental guy, but I was way more judgmental than I am now. Now I try and, whenever somebody has an issue or somebody's doing something, I mean, even to the point where, if somebody cuts me off or they're driving like a jerk, oftentimes I'll be like, I hope everything's okay. What do I know? Maybe they're rushing to the hospital because their
Yeah.
spouse or their child got into a car wreck or their parents got into a car wreck and they're rushing to the hospital, And so I try to, it doesn't mean I like it or I think it's okay to do that, but I don't get nearly as mad. And I try to be open to what situations other people are going through and their fears and triumphs and I'm far more apt to celebrate with people over things that I might think are silly.
Mm-mm.
But listen, if you want to celebrate over it, then let's celebrate. Yay. I feel like I'm and I also love life more. I didn't love life for a long time. It was just, how am I going to get through the next day? And now I see unlimited opportunity. Having come out of that, it's like, oh my God, the world is a wonderful place still. It's not,
Sure.
it's not this hellscape, emotional hellscape that I was living in. It actually is a fun place and a wonderful place. And we have a tremendous opportunity for the time that we're here to affect people, even if it's only a small number of people in our own little, world. We have a tremendous opportunity to be significant to those people.
Wow. You and I could just keep talking, but we have covered 30 minutes, which I think we've covered a lot in those 30 minutes too. So thank you for joining me. Before we go, and
I
I
have never
love
been
your
accused.
choice. What is the song you listen to when you need an extra boost of energy? And do you listen to this when you're in the gym?
I haven't been in the gym for a while. I have to I have a medical thing with a muscle that I got to get fixed. It's a hernia, so I got to get that fixed before I can get back in. But yeah, I mean, I love the song. It's called Backup Plan. And, there's the premise of the song is getting back, the backup plan is to get back up. And,
Mm-hmm.
there's a line in it says, life's got a lot of sticks and stones and a blade that'll cut you to the bone. But if you're doing what you love and it kills you, you can live with that all day long. And I was just like, I mean, I just think that's a great lyric. I love it.
Yeah, it is really. You had mentioned it to me and I wasn't familiar. So I went and listened after we got off our last call. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a good song. So I will put a link to that in the show notes. And then Everett, if people want to continue this conversation with you or have a new conversation with you, where is the best place for them to find you?
Well, I mean, they can email me at everettfarnell@gmail.com. Of course, you can always find me on social media. Facebook is the one I'm on most. And everettfarnell.com is my website. So they're welcome to go there. I don't think I have a contact page there, but if you poke around and click some of the things, you'll find a way to get a message to me. But social media is probably the easiest, just facebook.com/everettfarnell.
All right. I will put a link to those places in the show notes as well. Thank you again for joining me today on Fine is a 4-letter word.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've had a great time.
Hey, before we wrap up, I want to pull out a few things from this conversation with Everte Farnell that I know are going to land for you. Number one, you can reinstall your beliefs. The ones you were handed as a kid about money, about your worth, about what's possible for you, those are not permanent. Whenever Everett caught himself saying something disempowering, he'd consciously call it out. That's bullshit. That's not true. This is true. It takes intention. It takes time. And yes, you will likely backslide, but catching yourself and consciously choosing a different thought is how it actually changes. Number two, your subconscious does not know when you're joking. When you say, I'm so stupid, I could never do that, even as a throwaway comment, your brain is taking notes. Watch what you say about yourself. Number three, abuse doesn't always look the way we expect. The stat Everett shared was that 51% of domestic abuse is female on male, even though it's far less reported and far less physically dangerous on average than the reverse. He also raised an interesting systemic point about when he sought a civil injunction after his ex was arrested. And the judge denied it, telling him, "You're a big guy. You could have stopped this at any time." He's not minimizing the physical danger women face from male partners. He's making a point that the cultural response to male victims of like embarrassment and disbelief, that is its own problem. Number four, a toxic environment is still toxic no matter how you rationalize it. Everett had read research suggesting kids do better in two-parent households, even when the parents aren't in love. But what he missed was that this doesn't hold true when the household is actively toxic. He also named a second, harder to admit reason for not leaving the toxicity, and that was fear. Number five, coming out the other side changes you for the better. Everett is now healthier, more empathetic, more present, and more alive than he's ever been. The hard road can lead somewhere extraordinary. That's what we unpacked today. If this resonated with you or you know someone who needs to hear it, share this episode. I'm Lori Seitz, and this is Fine is a 4-letter word. I'll see you next time.